Greetings to our Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota and our Lakewood Ranch Unitarian Universalists, as well as our visitors. I'm the Reverend Doug Wadkins, Interim Senior Minister. Today I'm joined by Catherine Bonner to present A Time for All Ages. Don Bryn, Robert Lischetti, and our Mass Choir will help with the music, and we continue to be grateful for the work of Doug Caldwell and Klaus Obermeit and our technical assistants and lots of behind-the-scenes help. We offer a very special welcome to our visitors. We're glad you're here. We hope that while you're here, you'll take just a moment to go to our homepage and click on the banner that is marked Welcome Visitors. That will give you some information about the congregation to get to know us better. We hope that while you're there that you will also sign our virtual guest book. If you do so, we will send you our weekly newsletter, The Contact, as well as links for our various gatherings on Zoom. I hope that when you're able, you will try some of those gatherings. It's a wonderful way to get to know us as well. One of those gatherings will happen right after the service this morning, our coffee hour, a chance to check in with people, whether you're old or a continuing member or brand new here. We hope that you'll be a part of that gathering. That's the same link that is for the forum in the morning. If you don't happen to have it, I hope you'll find it next week and join us after the service. As a special announcement, we're beginning a new series of 8 sessions in both our traditional chalice groups and in a newer format anyway, the Journey Circles. Both of these groups are a great way for members and friends and newcomers alike to join together to reflect on significant life topics. It is also a wonderful way to get to know yourself better and others. It is a wonderful connection with our congregation. If you've been looking for some way to reconnect or connect here, this is a great way to get to know people. We have a couple of openings in groups. We have a group on the first and third Mondays from 2 to 3:30. That's the more traditional chalice group. And then we have the new Journey Circles that use our monthly themes as their focus. And that will be on the first and third Thursdays from 1:30 to 3. If you have questions about that, you can give Reverend Beth a call or send her an email. And you can also, in the contact, find the email to sign up for the Chalice Circles. May we now join together as we prepare for worship with our prelude. As we light our chalice, I invite you to light a candle or your own chalice at home with us. May this flame cast its light toward the coming days, reminding us that the future is not simply a place we are going, but a place we are creating. The path of new possibilities will not be found, but made. A new world is waiting to be built. May our time together light the way. We light this chalice in the spirit of the sixth principle, affirming and promoting the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.
I love the lines from our chalice lighting words today. The path of new possibilities will not be found, but made. A new world is waiting to be built. So in our Time for All Ages, I want to tell you a story about two girls who made a path of possibilities. While everyone's contribution to make this a better world is important, sometimes the smallest of us have to lead the way. This is a story of two girls, sisters in fact. Their parents were immigrants to this land of opportunity who came here to study at university. They fell in love, became professionals in their own fields, marched in the civil rights, and created their own small family in California. But as happens from time to time, the love of the parents had waned and died, and the two girls lived with their mom. They were poor and needed a lot of help from their friends and government programs just to make it. One day, the two girls were looking out their apartment window, and a big idea came to them. Instead of a dirt lot courtyard, they envisioned a playground with a swing and a slide, a place that all kids and parents could gather for fun and for fellowship. When their mom returned home from work, they told her of their great idea, and instead of putting the kibosh on their dream, she instead encouraged them to find a way. Well, first, they had to get the landlord to agree. The two sisters went to the landlord, and without even a second of thought, he said, no, don't think so. Well, that was not the answer the girls wanted, but they were not deterred. They thought they just had to think harder about how do I change a no into a yes. So they talked to the other kids in the apartment about the playground and got great ideas and support. So they all went to the landlord with their revised plans. Well, the landlord thought for less than 5 seconds and said, no, this project is too big and too expensive. Well, of course, that was not the answer that they wanted, so the older sister asked, if we ask our parents and do it ourselves, can we fix up the courtyard? The landlord thought for a whole 10 seconds and finally shrugged and said, sure, if you can do it yourselves. Well, the children were excited and ran home to talk to their parents. And you can probably guess how that went. No, 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 no. The children met in the courtyard, sad about their dreams being stopped. And just then, Mr. Green stopped by and said, you know, I work in construction, and I might be able to get some lumber to build a sandbox. Here it was, a maybe instead of a no. A maybe was something that could become a yes. I really love the positive thinking of children. Well, that maybe did turn into a yes. And then others stepped forward. Ms. Lopez, who worked in a garage, was able to get a tire to make a swing. Mr. Peterson brought plantings back from his job at the local retailer. And before you know it, there was a playground where kids and parents could gather for fun and fellowship instead of just a dirt lot. And the girls learned the lesson. No one can do everything, but everyone can do something. And you may have already guessed that this is a story based on a Harris family tale. Yeah, this Harris. It was Kamala Harris that the picture didn't show up. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Will you join us in our opening hymn, number 1024, When the Spirit Says Do? We move now into a time of centering. We'll begin with some centering in words and then invite you to a few moments of silence and then end by singing together Spirit of Life. Our centering in words is taken from the writing of Minister Rebecca Parker, Choose to Bless the World. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gifts of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question. What will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will, a moving forward into the world with the intention to do good. It is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. There is an embrace of kindness that encompasses all life, including yours. And while there is injustice, anesthetization, or evil, there moves a holy disturbance, a benevolent rage, a revolutionary love protesting, urging, insisting that which is sacred will not be defiled. Those who bless the world live their lives as a gesture of thanks for this beauty and this rage. None of us alone can save the world. Together, there is another possibility waiting. Will you join us for a few moments of quiet together and then singing together, Spirit of Life? Our reading this morning is taken from the writing of Howard Zinn. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending the spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act, in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents. And to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. Here ends our reading. As we move into our offering, I invite you to remember that we have a donate button on our homepage, and it will allow you not only to give to the continuing work of this congregation and to the Share the Plate offering that I'll tell you about in just a moment, but you can also set up a recurring gift, and you don't have to even think about giving to the congregation or to the various worthy recipients. This month, we're sharing the plate with Transition House, one of our ongoing special projects that is dedicated to helping one family at a time out of homelessness. Through the Social Justice Committee, we partner with the Sarasota Housing Authority and identify a working family that needs safe, affordable housing and is ready and able to contribute financially. We refurnish the home for each new family and give a rent subsidy based on the family's income, which is currently $200 a month. We began this in 2014, and we are in the midst of helping our third family, a single mom with 2 teenagers. She is a certified nursing assistant and one of our healthcare workers, heroes, who is working hard in risky situations during the pandemic. She was also recently out of work for 2 months while recovering from a broken ankle that required surgery. The Social Justice Committee budget had the means to help make up the needed rent for those 2 months, and she is so grateful and thankful for us helping keep her in her home during her recovery and without the worry of eviction. And Mom reports that she is back at work and back to her pre-accident budget. So as we join in listening to the offertory, I invite you to think about all the ways you may be generous, but most of all, to share generously with our project with the Transition House. The offering will now be greatly given and received. Blanca Quintero is 53 and she lives in Southern California. And she tried for weeks to get assistance when she tested positive for the coronavirus. But when no assistance came, she finally realized that she needed to cross the border regularly to Mexico to receive assistance. She already knew very well how serious the disease had been because she had lost, at that point, 15 of her family members and/or her friends to the coronavirus. And at that point, her husband, daughter, son, and grandson were all struggling with the virus as well as her. She was used to those difficult points. She settled in the United States as an 18-year-old bride pregnant with a child who would be born with special needs. Quintero was already a mother to a toddler, spoke no English, and had no clue how to navigate the nation's horrific healthcare system. But her lifeline was the support of the Promotores de Salud, our community health workers. And from them, she learned the questions she needed to ask the surgeons and the support services that would be able to assist with her daughter's developmental delays. Now, Quintero is clear about what she needs to do in support of others in times of coronavirus. She now is working as a Promotores de Salud herself, and she knows the effects of the virus all too well, and is often joined by Leslie, her daughter, and that is an image of the two of them. In the front is Blanca, and in the back is Leslie hugging someone as they work with the community. They feel deeply about their work, and Linda Sprague Martinez, who is a professor at Boston University, who works with community health research, said that these workers are a safety net. They're able to translate information from institutions to a community in a way that is meaningful because they know personally how racism plays out. And they see people, they see neighbors, they see friends, whereas systems don't really see you, Sprague Martinez added. They see a number, they see a chart. Promotores in Coachella Valley in California have been essential in getting out information for vaccinations to residents, being able to be a conduit of accurate information, especially about their concerns, and supporting them through the entire process. Leslie Quintero's mission is especially important to her because she is a medical assistant and has been able to help Spanish-speaking patients understand the doctor's orders and serve as a bridge between marginalized communities and the medical establishment. COVID-19, with its devastating impact on low-income neighborhoods and communities of color, has only intensified the need for this essential work. Well, I don't have to tell you that the last few years in general and the last 2 years have been a time of significant upheaval for the U.S. and the world at large. And I was especially interested as I thought about talking with you about the possibilities for change in this time, how often I found myself returning to the impact of coronavirus and how it gave us insight into almost everything that I would speak to you about today as an opportunity for us to engage in the needed work of change and transformation. Andurati Roy wrote, "The pandemic is a portal." And Emily Wright Magoon goes on to say, "This means that psychologists call this the doorway effect. Walking through open doors, crossing a threshold, resets the memory to make room for the creation of a new episode. We are currently passing through many doorways," she writes, "and unless we make room for something new, unless we allow ourselves to be reoriented, no real change happens. We just find the remote and go back to our show. If we let it, this portal that the coronavirus gives us invites us to step back and take in more of what is being revealed with shocking clarity. I'm reminded that as we just very recently honored the bleak anniversary of September 11, 2001, that in that time we were offered the possibility of understanding our relationship with the world differently, with greater clarity and compassion. So much of the world already understood the devastating impacts of terrorism, and so much of what was set into motion that day offered insight into the reality that our own history and our own policies helped set into motion. There were glimmers of insight at first, but they were so quickly drowned out by our patriotic posturing, and too often we cast ourselves merely as innocent victims in those events. It could have been a greater time of us thinking more deeply about our connection with the world and what it means to be just and compassionate. Charles Eisenstein writes, "COVID-19 is like a rehab intervention that breaks the addictive hold of normality. It interrupts a habit and makes it visible, and it turns us from compulsion to a choice. When the crisis subsides, we might have occasion to ask whether we want to return to normal or whether we might be something we've seen during this break in the routines that will help us encounter our future." So, for just a moment, what portals of change would the coronavirus offer to us? And what would it look like if we were to do some of that work? Well, the first area is one that I've already hinted at. The Washington Post reports that throughout the pandemic, the coronavirus has disproportionately carved a path through our nation's Latino, African American, Native American, and Pacific Islander communities. The death rates in those communities is at least double what it is for Caucasian and Asian Americans, federal data shows. But what's more, what is especially tragic in the Latino community is how much it has impacted 30 and 40-year-olds. In California, which has the nation's largest Hispanic population, the state figures show that Latino people ages 35 to 49 died of the virus more than 5.5 times the rate of white people the same age. And the gap was even wider a few months earlier when Quintero fell ill. Latino people in their prime were nearly 7 times more likely to die than their white peers in that time, according to the COVID Tracking Project. So to put it another way, 35 to 49-year-old Latinos represent 4.15% of the people in that age range in California, but 74% of the deaths. So many of the truths about our racial past only intensify the portal, which is a clarion that calls us for change. In addition to that, climate change is another area where the coronavirus is a portal to stark truths. It is related to the point I've already made. Many sources have talked about how environmental difficulty and pollution contributes to poor people and people of color getting sicker and dying more often. But there is other levels of the disproportionate environmental contamination from petrochemical facilities, landfills, waste incinerators, oil refineries, smelters. All of these things are also devastating to the planet's population in the fact that they are very closely linked between the coronavirus and the crisis in nature. We know that human degradation of our natural habitat and agriculture and urban expansion increased the risk of spillover of animal viruses to humans. So, by reinforcing global warming, pollution, and expanding and decreasing natural habitat, we have increased the possibility of this pandemic and future pandemics. If we want to reduce that risk, we must work with the natural ecosystem and stabilize our climate. And certainly, we have seen how powerfully our current political divide in this country has really contributed to deadly realities in our country. So David Corton adds to our insights when he writes, that it is true that we want to get past this time in our history, but we realize that we need to change some things. We need a system of healthcare accessible to everyone, regardless of income or documentation. We need just compensation and job security for those who do essential work and are often least rewarded. And we need to be guaranteed that if our jobs evaporate, we won't starve or lose our health care. So, there's a lot there that could feel very heavy, and it does. But the other part, and the most important part, I think, of this sermon is that it also offers us so many opportunities to engage in change, each of us in our own way. And it begins with, as Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams says, by our willingness to give up our denial, to look honestly at the world as it is. And Angel believes that so many people in our world are already doing that work, that we are at this tipping point in our culture, and says what we must do is say to ourselves when we look at the realities around us of this pandemic, to bring it on, to face it, to let it be our pathway to truth. So what would it look like if we embraced that pathway to truth? What would it ask of us? I believe it asks of us to really embrace our interdependence. This is a component of our theology that is deeply and powerfully a part of not only our history, but our principles. The interconnected web of existence is powerfully illustrated by the coronavirus. But what I think it asks us to do is engage in a process that has been going for a long time, and we've actually already been a part of it. But the more that we are conscious of the power of that process and what it asks of us, the more likely we are to use this time well. I'm talking about something that has been referred to as emergent strategy. And Adrienne Marie Brown breaks it down for us, what that phrase means. First, she says this about emergence. Emergence is the way complex systems and patterns arise out of a multiplicity of relatively simple interactions. And then she goes on to talk about strategy. She says, I've never really given it much thought, but what do we really mean by strategy? She explains, strategy is a plan of action towards a goal. If we really want to, and she really wants to emphasize the A's in that sentence, an action and a goal and a plan. This is a practice of narrowing down, identifying a singular path and a strategy and one way and agenda, one set of values, reducing the wild and wonderful world into one thing that we can grasp, handle, hold on to, and advance. Now, she is clear that we have to be very careful about that because often when we focus on that simplicity and clarity, we leave out essential voices. So she summarizes that emergent strategy is about shaping the conditions through which a group can engage in relatively simple interactions and generate many possibilities, even contradictory ones, and then explore, try out, and adapt these possibilities into actions in support of moving towards shared goals or a single goal. The thing is, we participate in that all the time in our community. What is especially important now is that we realize the second part of what emergent strategy asks us to do. It does ask us to try new things, to do them, but to realize that all of them are a work in progress, that we will learn from them, and we have to be willing, when we learn that there is something better, to take a deep breath, stop, and recalibrate what we are doing. We've been trying to do that for over a year now as we encounter the pandemic together. And it is hard work to have to constantly rethink what it is that the current moment and the current realities are asking us to do. But it's also a time of great power and possibility. It asks each of you to realize where your place of connection with all the different things that are happening during the pandemic and find your way of doing that important work, whatever it is, to continue to take a step towards something better, something more meaningful. Finally, Teresa Soto writes this: "There is the moment when the dreams we share are newly born, wet and wriggling in our hands. Sometimes," she writes, "it's true that saving futures look vulnerable and small before us. We remain unsure, but we just hold on and do what we can." In the coming weeks, may we use this time to explore what it is that we are called to do in this world that has so much important work, to do it lovingly and courageously together. I invite you to join me in our closing hymn, hymn number 121, the first and last verse, "We'll Build a Land." As we prepare to end our service, these words by Sherry Woodbury: "What a world there can be if we imagine, if we share, if we care, if we act. What a world there can be if we are indivisible in heart and make the most of our one shot. Let us trust that the seeds we plant in time will flourish and that we can create the tipping points for a better world. For our children's children, the great web of life on earth, let us make a new start." We may extinguish this chalice, but not the light of that larger truth, not the fire of our commitment to changing this world together, not the warmth of human love and community. These remain until we gather together again. So may it be. May the rest of your day be a wonderful one. We look forward to seeing you here next week.